I would say that since we've been talking a lot about veterans, I'll talk about Nicholas Seedsman first. Nicholas is a veteran. He was an Australian Special Forces. I think they call it SAS, which I'm not a vet, but I understand that they're a pretty elite organization, and they participate with the U.S. forces and the Big Five. And so he saw a lot of combat. I think he did over a dozen tours, and so he was really beat up from an orthopedic standpoint. But something that we touched on earlier is that some of his injuries started spiraling into also neurological issues. Some of it was PTSD, probably. Some of it was traumatic brain injury. And so there was a whole host of things going on with Nicholas. And one of the things that he found is that the minute that, that PTSD was brought up, doctors immediately kind of pushed him off and just said, oh, no, it's a psychological disorder. We can't help you. Because he was having all sorts of other autoimmune type symptoms, sleep deprivation, sensitivity to light, terrible fatigue, along with his other orthopedic issues. So like I said, for lack of better terms, he was beat up. But now that I've gotten to know him personally, and he shared this before and allowed us to talk about it, so I'm not saying anything out of turn, but he got to a point where he was suicidal even. He just couldn't live. He didn't see himself living another year. And so stem cell was a last ditch effort for him. So when we first saw, we call him Nico now, but when we saw Nicholas, he was at a place where his body was not keeping up with the degeneration on multiple levels. So his protocol took a long time. It took a couple of years. It wasn't just a one and done shot, so to speak, for him. It was a protocol that took many years. But I'm happy to report that he has had 100% turnaround. He's pain free. His symptoms, he's got a new lease on life. These are his words, not mine. But so he says that stem cell and BioXcellerator has saved his life. So I know that there's many, many other vets out there that are experiencing those type of symptoms that I think we can help.
Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show today. Glad to have you with us. We are recording from Hebrews Coffee in Magnolia, Texas. Magnolia, Texas. So I don't know if we're on location or off location. I always get those mixed up, but we're recording somewhere else today. But it's great to have you with us. My name is Jeremy Stalnecker here with Chad Robichaux, and it's good to be able to record these together in person. We often do these kind of separate.
Yeah.
So it's good to be together. Thank you for listening. And if you're watching, thank you for watching. If you're listening and not watching, you should be watching. So if you're over at Mojo 50, thank you for being there. We have a great audience there. So thankful for our relationship there. When this show is over, take some time, go over to YouTube, and you can check us out. Find the Mighty Oaks Show, Mighty Oaks Foundation. You'll find our channel there, and put in Mighty Oaks. It'll come up. Subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell. That lets you know when more content comes online. And I try to remind our audience of this, every time we talk. We not only have this show there, but we have tons of other content, hundreds of other videos, as well as some other shows that we do. And you'll be blessed and encouraged by those. So please take some time to go over there, check that out. If you find something that you like, share it out and leave us a comment. We'd love to connect with you there. That would be awesome. For those of you that are listening to the podcast version of this show, thank you for doing that as well. Make sure you subscribe there so you know when this continues to come online. And appreciate so much our audience. We've had the opportunity to talk, about so many different things over the years, and the conversations around really veterans and the military and veterans care and all these things. It's an ever expanding field.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we're exiting now 20 years of war, right. And that 20 years of war has cost our military community a lot of injuries physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, which is what we deal with a lot at Mighty Oaks Foundation. But we have to have a remedy for all those different things. And so many variety of things out there. And, one of those we can get to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think one of the great things that's come out of the last, several years of research is an understanding of the difference between some of these things.
Right.
Post-traumatic stress disorder and brain trauma, brain injuries, although they often present the same way, they're not the same issue.
Right. I think people confuse the symptoms, right? People see how symptoms manifest and they think the root cause is the same, but oftentimes can be very, very different.
And thankfully, today we have a great guest. This is someone that we have gotten to know over the last few months. Eric Stoffers is with us. He is the founder of BioXcellerator, the co-founder of Accelerate Biomedical Technologies, and the CEO of Bioscience Americas. Eric, thank you for being with us again. It's great to have you with us all the way from Colombia.
Yeah, that's right. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
This is a big conversation and a big topic. We want to jump into a lot of the specifics. That's an easy word to say. Specifics around it. But before we do, for those that aren't familiar with you and with your company, can you tell us how you got involved in this, why you got involved in this, and then maybe more specifically for our audience, how you started to focus on military veterans and folks who are still serving in the military?
Yeah, absolutely. So just by way of background, I am a business guy. I'm not a doctor and I'm not a scientist, even though I'm running a life sciences company. I essentially, throughout my career, have spotted global trends, and simplistically, I spotted the stem cell industry as a major global trend and a paradigm shift in the way that healthcare is going to be provided. It is being provided now with companies like ours, but I think the industry is just going to skyrocket here, within the next decade or so. But to back up a little bit, I was in real estate. I was putting together portfolios of single family homes, especially when our great country went through such turmoil and the recession time. And I'm from Arizona, and our housing market was just crushed. We were able, as an investment opportunity, we were able to pick up homes for sometimes 60% under value. You couldn't build them for what we were buying them for. So I saw that as a trend as well, and it's certainly a United States trend. So I did capitalize on that market. I put together portfolios of rental homes. I ended up teaming up with a group that was doing it on a much bigger scale. We took that company public. We turned it into a REIT, a real estate investment trust, focusing on mostly single family homes. So I was running that company. I was the CEO of that REIT, and I was helping just a colleague of mine market a property in Mexico. And it was an old resort property, and long story short is we were not getting great offers. And so thinking outside of the box, and being that I am from Arizona, which is a border town to Mexico, or border state to Mexico, there was this term that was really starting to rise in popularity, and it was medical tourism. So what I was doing by way of marketing was starting to market this property to medical tourism type doctors and physicians, companies. So I was marketing to plastic surgeons and dentists and vision companies. And anyways, the point is that a stem cell company kind of came to me and said, "Hey, look, we think that this property actually might be right for us. We're looking to take our science out of the laboratory and put it into action and actually treat people and help people." And other than what I had seen on the news, that was my first real introduction to stem cell, and deep introduction into what it really can do and how many ailments it can treat and how many lives it can potentially save. So my mind was blown, pretty quickly. And that started the trajectory of me transitioning into forming BioXcellerator.
When you talk about medical tourism, so why? I think two things. One, why do people tour outside of the United States to go get medical treatments done? I mean, I think a lot of people would think, well, if I get something done in the United States, it's safer. If I go to Mexico, is it as safe? If I go to Colombia, is it as safe? That's a question I think a lot of people would have. I'm sure you have a really good answer for that. I hope you do. And then what are the restrictions in the United States that keeps people from being able to do those treatments here? So that's really two questions there.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack just with those two questions. So, what I would say, just from a brief comment perspective, because of what you said about the safety issue, medical tourism kind of started its popularity with things that are known to be safe. So people were going across the border to get glasses. People were going across the border to do dental work that was pretty standard and safe to do in a place like Mexico. However, when you start getting to the higher level science, there are very few countries that have the wherewithal and the knowledge to be able to implement things like stem cell therapy. So that's one of the reasons we went to Colombia, because it's an incredible medical system. It's extremely safe. For those of us that travel overseas quite a bit and have had medical procedures in places like Colombia, I don't even get treatment in the U.S. anymore. But so the safety is certainly an issue in some places, not Colombia. But unfortunately, in the U.S., fortunately and unfortunately, we have a great organization and multiple organizations like the FDA. But when we're looking at the FDA, and it's a fantastic organization, it's under fantastic leadership, and they are here to protect us, the American people, and they do a great job at that. I would say that unfortunately they're a little bit behind in the way that they have taken a real serious look at stem cell therapy, and they all seem to be behind it in the conferences that we go to, and the contact we have with Scott Gottlieb and Janet Woodcock, the commissioner. They all seem to be pretty knowledgeable and behind it. But some of the regulations and certainly some of the language in those regulations are antiquated. They still haven't defined things like what they consider to be minimal manipulation of a cellular product. And so that leaves companies like ours that don't want to play in the gray area, because there are some companies that are doing that in the United States, using very low level science. But what we know with our company and with global research, that the highest level science is producing great results. So we had to go offshore for just to produce and get our patients the best possible outcomes.
Without going down a rabbit hole on conspiracy theories, I would love to do that. Maybe we can do that when
we're not going to talk about conspiracy theories, but let me bring up a conspiracy theory real quick.
Well, I mean, is there like a big farm pushback to keep stem cell out of the United States in order to keep people less healthy? I mean, is that a reality, or is that just a conspiracy that people like me think?
I think if I wasn't running the CEO of a healthcare company and we were talking privately, I might go a little bit deeper. But I will tell you this: look, what I typically do when I have these type of conversations is I like to turn it back to maybe your audience, or the question back to the FDA or organizations that may have an interest in keeping people sick. I'll tell you this: I travel to Colombia. When I'm here for just a few weeks, my energy levels improve. I shed a couple pounds. I usually lose about 5 pounds in the span of about 3 or 4 weeks. Doing no additional exercise, nothing changing other than the food that I consume here. They don't have a lot of preservatives here. They don't feed their cows and their chickens hormones. It's just a cleaner way of living. So starting with the food, I would say that's a big thing. And then, one of the things that stem cell therapy does very, very well is it helps modulate the immune system. It helps reduce inflammation. It helps combat things like autoimmune disease. And there are many, 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 many of those. And right now, pharmaceuticals are the only thing that treat some of those. And they only treat the symptoms. They don't get to the systemic root. So I would say that there's many big money players, big, powerful organizations that have an interest in slowing down stem cell for sure.
Yeah, billions of dollars to be lost if you actually heal people. And I just, the reason I ask that is because I see so many people, I know we're going to get into stem cell and what it does and what it actually does, but I've just seen so many testimonies of people who are just deathbed, ill, injured, and recover from stem cell. And I'm like, what's the blockade? What's the red tape that keeps it from happening here in the United States, which is, supposed to be one of the greatest countries in the world, and I believe it is, but why can't it happen here? And that's my conspiracy, is that billions of dollars to be lost. And so there's going to be a fight for people like you to bring it here.
Well, look, there's another piece of that too, because we know it can happen. Meaning that these regulations can be fast tracked. We've just seen it with COVID-19. There are many, many, many vaccines that have been fast tracked through the process. There are even clinical trials in stem cell. My company is doing one here in Colombia, but there are many companies that we're even associated with them from an arm's length that have had the FDA approved clinical trials for COVID-19 with stem cell therapy. So we know they can push it through. And there is no debate in the FDA or in the scientific community whether or not stem cell is safe, which is the biggest part of fast tracking. So if you know they're safe, they're not going to really hurt people. I mean, the side effects are so minimal. Then why can't we push this through and help millions of people?
Yeah, I'm with you.
When we talk about the people that we can help, and we spend most of our time in the veteran community or the military community, specific to those communities, what are the treatments? What does stem cells? What do stem cells? I've got a question. I just can't get it out of my mouth. What do stem cells treat specific to those? I mean, we're talking about physical injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, TBI, all of the above. Are there people who this won't help? People who are listening to us that are saying, "I hurt, I'm struggling in these areas." How do they know if this is for them? Something they should investigate.
Well, you've named many ailments and injuries that stem cell does treat, and it doesn't treat everything, and it's not a cure-all. But I would say that if people are in some type of chronic pain, certainly with an orthopedic type issue, any type of spine and disc, that's something that we specialize in, and neurological conditions that you mentioned, things like CTE or traumatic brain injury. Sometimes those mask symptoms and mimic symptoms like PTSD. But specifically for our veterans, these guys, the vets and their families have sacrificed so much for our country, and they're really an underserved community when it comes to their healthcare. Not taking anything away from the VA, this technology just isn't available in the United States. So the VA doesn't have access to what we're able to give to our veterans. And one of the things that we see a lot, and I would implore vets that have some type of PTSD symptoms, it may be PTSD from some type of combat situation, but even our guys that have not seen combat are having symptoms of PTSD, and sometimes that's because they're having multiple concussions on a daily basis just from out the shooting range. Much less practicing with mortars and some of the bigger explosives. So that's mild traumatic brain injury on a very regular basis, which is very dangerous. And this is the same thing we see in our high impact athletes, like our NFL players and UFC fighters. So I would say definitely look into our company. I'm not aware of any others that are specifically treating for these symptoms with our protocol, but there may be, and certainly stem cell it's a possibility because there's not really any others.
One thing I find fascinating about this is that you can differentiate between the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and what's causing those symptoms. And I think this is something that a lot of people really struggle with and just don't understand, is that the physical injury, the CTE, the traumatic brain injuries, they cause symptoms that look very much like post-traumatic stress disorder. And so the VA is treating most of the time with pharmaceuticals the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder without dealing with the underlying issue, which is, the damage has been done to the brain or the central nervous system.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating. Is there a way that you evaluate someone before beginning treatment with stem cells to determine this is post-traumatic stress disorder caused by, acute trauma, or this is probably a traumatic brain injury that's causing the symptoms that look very much like post-traumatic stress? How do you evaluate that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important because PTSD alone is more of a psychological disorder that has to be treated in a much different way than stem cell therapy. So, if it is just solely PTSD, they may not be a candidate for stem cell therapy. So yeah, there's an evaluation process that starts with brain scan. We typically like to send people to places like the Almond Clinic and there's many across the US that specialize in neurological and brain scans, specifically MRIs, but with a certain Tesla level. And there's many other tests that go along with that so that they can have an understanding, like a cognitive baseline. And then if that scan comes back where the PTSD, or at least the symptoms, could be caused by a massive inflammation in the brain, then those people are a great candidate for us.
Yeah. So we're using the word stem cell. We're talking about stem cell, but most people have no idea what stem cell is, and probably people have a misunderstanding of what it is, what it's not. What is stem cell actually mean? Where does it come from? And also, last question with that: how ethical is the process? I mean, when you talking about coming from, oftentimes coming from umbilical cords of babies and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's super important to point out that this is a very ethically sourced stem cell that our company uses. It is not embryonic. It's not to be confused with embryonic, which sometimes people do. And that's where the controversy started back in the around the 2000 era.
With President Bush, right? Was
yeah,
pushing.
yeah, and he actually did a lot of great work for the stem cell industry. Now, at that time, people in the industry were very upset because we weren't able to continue a lot of the research that we had, tremendous results with. But what it really focused on was the embryonic sourcing of the stem cells. And what that forced companies like ours to do, or other organizations, is to shift away from the embryonic type stem cells and look into other stem cells. And what we found, and Dr. Arnold Kaplan coined the term MSC, but the MSC is the mesenchymal stem cell. Some physicians or scientists will call it mesenchymal stem cell. But basically, that is the master cell, and that is the building block of not just life, but it's also the cell that is able to modulate your immune system. So it improves your immunity, it upregulates or downregulates your immune system. It promotes healing within your own body. It reduces inflammation, which I'm sure a lot of your guests and you guys know is the death of all, basically, inflammation. Right?
Yeah.
But then it helps amplify your own body to fight disease. And it also repairs damaged tissue. So it's really great for athletes. That's why we see a lot of professional athletes here. But it also helps autoimmune disease when your body is degenerating, which, by the way, guys, we're all degenerating. Eventually, I think everybody's going to need stem cells. So it's really an incredible science. We take it several steps further. We use something that we call the golden cell. And this helps essentially put together the best outcomes for our patients. But what it comes down to is the two P's, and that's purity and potency. And on the purity side, we really have to take into account a lot of safety measures. So safely sourced, safe and ethically sourced, and then safety testing, and then the technology is the safest on the planet. And then when you get into potency, it has mostly to do with quantity, so the multiplication and expansion of those cells.
And that comes from umbilical cord, right?
Yeah. We get them. So healthy mom, healthy baby, go home and live healthy lives together. They just happen to donate, the most pure and potent stem cells on the planet through that cord, which before that was medical waste. Now it's saving thousands of lives.
Right. And so I'm not trying to play scientist here because I don't know much. I'm trying to ask, there's stem cells and his exosomes that come from it?
Yeah, exosome is an extracellular vesicle that is secreted by the stem cell. Exosomes, you're seeing a rise in popularity with some companies out there that are just making exosomes and administering exosomes. That's just a small piece of the puzzle. I mean, really, the stem cell is the intelligent cell of your body. So the shift in what the acronym that I mentioned before, MSC, instead of standing for mesenchymal stem cell, really our community is shifting to call it medical signaling cell, because what the stem cell does is it signals the rest of your body to produce or repair or reduce inflammation, or send off more exosomes if that's what you need. So we don't necessarily just inject exosomes, because your cells already produce those if that's exactly what you need.
Okay.
Where does the research, there's a lot of research obviously behind this. So kind of broadly, who's leading the way on researching this and understanding this? And then how does a company like yours maintain, kind of a cutting edge knowledge of what is working, what is not working, what's new, and how to move forward? I would imagine it's an incredible challenge in a science like this.
It is. It's a tough company to run. I tell you, it's a much more moving parts than a real estate company. But with that, how do we stay on the cutting edge? It's a lot of research. So we're both a research organization and also applying that research to patients when we can, and a lot of that is through clinical trial. So, that's one of the misnomers about stem cell. A lot of times people will go and ask their doctor, their physician, their MD, their orthopedic surgeon, whatever, about stem cell. And that doctor may or may not have an opinion on it. Typically, they think that it's the future of medicine, and most of them don't know how the future is happening right now, and we're actually having great results. But regardless of whatever that physician says, the thing is that this isn't medicine. It's really science, and then the application of the science through a physician. So it's got to be, a company for the best results, in my opinion. It's got to be a company with both of those aspects, and then you have to have the research component as well to stay ahead of the game, because this is a very fast-moving industry, and the technology is advancing. So yeah, we have a research arm. We have a scientific laboratory that is producing these high quality cells and our specific proprietary golden cells. And then we also have many, many great physicians that are experts at applying it. So there's a lot of moving parts to staying ahead of the curve. But I would say that those are the three aspects that are most important.
So myself, as I broke my body up in Afghanistan, and 14 years of special operations, and then 20 pro MMA fights, and life of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My body's has been pretty torn up, and through the years, I've gotten Prolozone, or I've gotten PRP. I've gotten what I was told was stem cell. I even did an intravenous stem cell treatment. What's the difference between those things that I've done here and what BioXcellerator does at your guys' location in Columbia?
Yeah, even though we focus on the stem cell therapy, we also think it's very important to do other alternative therapies. And as a part of our protocol, we prescribe some of those therapies. So things like PRP that you're doing, which is platelet-rich plasma, essentially taking the blood from your own body and I'm going to put it in some simplistic terms, but spinning the bloods in the centrifuge to where the platelets change viscosity. The thicker platelets are the platelet-rich plasma, which is again, simplistically, just kind of scooped out and repurposed to wherever your injury is. We recommend that. We prescribe that for our patients pre and post therapy sometimes. But we have taken that light years ahead also. So we have a product called BioX Gel, which is essentially a PRP derivative. But we, again, through our laboratory and our scientific research, have found a way to multiply that process by 3,000 times more potent than anything that we see on the planet right now. But we think it's important. So we also do PRP type treatments. We do things like hyperbaric therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, bioregulatory therapy. And so we prescribe all of that stuff. So, I mean, there is a major difference. Those are, what I would consider to be kind of lower level efficacy, lower level science. But still very important in the overall protocol.
Like when I got the intravenous stem cell here, what would have been different from the intravenous stem cell that I got in the United States and what I would get?
Well, so I don't know anything about your specific treatment. I don't know anything about the company. So I can't talk specifically about what it was that you got, but what I'm seeing in the industry as a whole in the United States is typically much lower level science. I'm not saying that that's what you got. Again, I don't know anything about it. But
sure, yeah.
In the US,
I mean, generally, so.
Yeah. Typically, we're seeing the source of the stem cells in the United States from either bone marrow aspirate or from adipose tissue, which is your own body. And so, those of us in the community think that there's some major issues with that because really those cells have been either dormant in your adipose tissue, your fat, or they've been exposed to your environment over 30 years, 40 years, however old you are. And those cells have started to degrade and degenerate, and they're not multiplying as fast as they should to keep up with your body's injuries. Otherwise, they would have been doing it already. So just taking those from your bone marrow and repurposing them somewhere, it doesn't do it's just so low level compared to what we do. But back to your question with the intravenous application, that's some gray area that we're not willing to play in right now, meaning that in the FDA, they do not look favorably on that yet because they have not defined the old regulation that was put into place 30, 35 years ago for bone marrow transplants. They just haven't changed the law. They haven't kept up with technology. So it's not that it's not safe. It's just that it's not necessarily legal or illegal. It's just not ruled upon yet. So that's a tough place to be if you're operating a big company.
Yeah. So you guys are, when you guys are actually doing the stem cell injections, I guess you're locating specific injuries, targeting locations.
And also intravenous applications. So that's something that is also very important as a piece of the protocol. But yeah, we'll do specific applications depending on what we're treating: intramuscular, intraarticular. We have a proprietary piece that is fantastic for the veterans and the high impact athletes, which is an interthecal application, which is essentially a lumbar puncture. So just like an epidural. So it's something that's done very, very regularly and safely. We have our neurosurgeons do it. So we also have people that are very qualified to do that.
Right.
But that helps pass the blood-brain barrier. And now you have stem cells, active stem cells, sometimes hundreds of millions, that are actively trying to reduce the inflammation in your brain and improve and
Wow. Yeah.
and promote healing.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Eric, you're the one of your many hats, one of your many roles. You're the chairman and trustee of Solutions for a Healthier World Foundation. So, as I look at your bio and the things that you've been involved in, clearly this is something you're passionate about, and you want to make sure that people have access to these treatments. Can you talk about that foundation a little bit? And then beyond that, I'd love to hear some stories, some success stories. When people talk about this and they wonder, well, what can be expected? What has happened? What kind of healing takes place? Because it kind of sounds like voodoo to those of us that don't know.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the foundation a little bit, and then talk about some of the successes that you've seen, some of the big stories of people who have experienced real healing from this?
Okay, yeah, perfect. So Solutions Found, we call it, but it's Solutions for a Healthier World Foundation is, like you said, it's something that I chair and passionate about because we help people. And we help people that are less fortunate have access to things like stem cell therapy. It's not just stem cell therapy; it's health related. It's finding solutions, for a healthier world, as it says. But
Yeah, right.
basically, being in this business on a daily basis tugs on your heartstrings. We hear some just incredible stories, incredibly devastating stories. We have to be in business to help people, so it is a business. But we also want to give back to the community. So Solutions for a Healthier World is a way to give back to some of the underserved communities, like veterans communities, also children. Those are kind of our focuses mainly. We have done some work outside of that, but mostly it's children in underserved communities and veterans. And it's been a lot of fun, and I wish we could help more people. And so if anybody wants to go donate, we'll help a bunch of people. But either way, we're doing just fine, and we're helping people. And then moving on to some of the success stories, and we've seen some of these through our foundation, but mostly from a company side. We treat dozens and dozens of patients, on a weekly basis. So I would say that since we've been talking a lot about veterans, I'll talk about Nicholas Seedsman first. Nicholas is a veteran. He was an Australian Special Forces. I think they call it SAS, which I'm not a vet, but I understand that they're a pretty elite organization, and they participate with the U.S. forces and the Big Five. And so he saw a lot of combat. I think he did, over a dozen tours, and so he was really beat up from an orthopedic standpoint. But something that we touched on earlier is that some of his injuries started spiraling into also neurological issues. Some of it was PTSD, probably. Some of it was traumatic brain injury, and so there was a whole host of things going on with Nicholas. And one of the things that he found is that the minute that that PTSD was brought up, doctors immediately kind of pushed him off and just said, "Oh no, it's a psychological disorder. We can't help you," because he was having all sorts of other autoimmune type symptoms, sleep deprivation, sensitivity to light, terrible fatigue, along with his other orthopedic issues. So like I said, for lack of better terms, he was beat up. But now that I've gotten to know him personally, and he shared this before, and allowed us to talk about it. So I'm not saying anything out of turn, but he got to a point where he was suicidal even. He just couldn't live. He didn't see himself living another year. And so stem cell was a last ditch effort for him. So when we first saw, we call him Nico now, but when we saw Nicholas, he was at a place where his body was not keeping up with the degeneration on multiple levels. So his protocol took a long time. It took a couple of years. It wasn't just a one and done shot, so to speak, for him. It was a protocol that took many years. But I'm happy to report that he has had 100% turnaround. He's pain free. His symptoms, he's got a new lease on life. These are his words, not mine. But so he says that stem cell and BioXcellerator has saved his life. I know that there's many, many other vets out there that are experienced those type of symptoms that I think we can help. And then I have another really cool story about quadriplegic too, if you guys have time.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Dustin Bunch, man, what a cool guy. He was a firefighter. He went out to Lake Havasu and as he did every year with his family, had a young daughter. And he was out on his boat and in the same place that they had parked for 20 years and dove off the boat. And this year the water was very, very shallow. So he was immediately paralyzed from the neck down, and he almost drowned. He's lucky that he had some paramedic buddies and also training himself to where he didn't drown in that moment. But anyways, when we saw him, we caught his injury very early, but he was a quadriplegic when he came here to Medellin, Colombia. And I happened to be here at that time. I traveled back and forth between the states, but I was lucky enough to be here and spend some time with him on his first trip. And just like Nicholas, his protocol takes many, many, many treatments, especially with something as severe as a spinal cord injury. But the one thing he said to me on that first trip was, I know this is experimental, Eric, and I know that my injury is as severe as it comes. But if you guys could get me to a place where I could at least just hold my daughter again, I think that would be all I could ask for. And so over the course of the next 2 years or so, we've seen great improvement from him. One of the things that he didn't ask for, but I think he would consider to be an amazing turnaround, is that he's now controlling his bowels and his bladder. So he doesn't have to have 24-hour a day, 7-day a week care, sort of dignity in his life. But he's also now holding his daughter. So he has movement in his arms. He can move his arms. He can brush his teeth. He can feed himself. He has feeling in his legs. He has some mobility in his legs. He's not out walking around. He's never going to run a marathon, but we're seeing some great results with Dustin, and we're obviously hoping for more, but his progress is continuing. So we're super excited about that.
That's awesome. Man, those are incredible stories. You talk about working with children. What kind of treatments do you do for children, or what is it that they're dealing with that you're working with?
Yeah, I would say that autism is going to be probably the biggest bucket that we see with our children. Now, there are some other rare diseases, and they come at us on a daily basis, things that just have no solutions. Unfortunately, that happens a lot in the younger years, but mostly it's autism. So, and it's a very specific type of autism, and we're really just starting down that path. Here in Colombia, the regulation is very strict. Just like the FDA. So we're not here because of deregulation. It's actually the opposite. They just happen to have a better process to get some of these therapies into the hands of patients that need it. So we've just been approved to be a treatment facility for autism as well. So that's the biggest bucket for kids. That and diabetes type 1. There's something called the honeymoon period. And when you start to catch diabetes type 1, when it's not necessarily a diet and lifestyle disease, but it's more the beta cell, and you start having symptoms like loss of eyesight and fatigue and constant urination. And when those symptoms start arising, that's when you catch that you're maybe in early onset diabetes, and stem cell works really well if you can get them in that honeymoon period. So those are usually children also.
autism is a big issue, and I realize you're not a physician, but what is it about stem cells that is able to have an impact on autism?
Yeah, so autism, typically it's a combination of autoimmune disease, neurological condition. It's a lot of times we think it starts in the gut. Your gut is your second brain. But for us, and specifically to your question, the type of autism that we would treat would just be something that had to do with inflammation in the brain. So that's something that, just like with our veterans and our high impact athletes, stem cells work very, very well at reducing inflammation. And we have a specific technique that helps it pass the blood-brain barrier that I mentioned earlier. So it would just be that form of autism. There's many other forms of autism that we would have to deny as a patient because it's just not, it's not specific enough.
What about, one of the biggest killers in the United States is heart disease. Stem cell have any impact on heart disease, high blood pressure?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So one of the first things that stem cells do when you're taking them intravenously is they go through the pulmonary system, and then they end up kind of sticking around and working for the heart as well. But yeah, so we see, again, it goes down to reducing inflammation in most cases. But sometimes with some of the other therapies combined with stem cell, yeah, we're seeing great results for cardiac and heart type related disease.
It sounds like there's so much ambiguity sometimes with illness. It's just hard to pinpoint what's going on, and so it's often treated again with medication. It seems like if we could flip that over and start with stem cell therapies, we really could root out a lot of the problems, bring some clarity to what the actual issues are, and determine if it's neurological, if it's physiological, if it's psychological, what exactly is going on. It seems like stem cells can really cut through a lot of the noise of that.
This is what we see, Eric, this is what we see in our work at Mighty Oaks Foundation, where we're dealing with, we believe we're dealing with spiritual wounds of trauma. When, we believe that when someone goes to combat and experiences combat trauma, they're really dealing with a spiritual wound, which requires a spiritual solution. And that's what Mighty Oaks provides to help them, get a hold of their life again. And this whole time they've been not dealing with the root cause, but they've been dealing with the symptoms. They've been taking medications for the symptoms and not really dealing with the real problem. And that's on a emotional or spiritual level. But with you on a physical level, people are probably still dealing with the symptoms and not dealing with the root cause. And it seems like stem cell attacks the root cause.
Yeah, we think, I think the trajectory of my company and the industry in general is going to start to focus more on health optimization and immunity and longevity. And all of that is preventative. That's not being reactive, and it's not treating the symptoms. So I think we're going to have, I want to make, my moonshot goal is to have 100 years old be the new 60. But all of that is preventative. So yeah, you guys are exactly right. Right now, our medical system, and it's considered to be one of the best in the world. I would argue that there's other countries that are doing some pretty incredible things too. But what I would propose is that our entire medical system needs to have a paradigm shift to proactive instead of reactive. We're sick care, not healthcare. And stem cell is one of those things that, and we have people do it all the time. I just had a family down here that it was their 5th year in a row here, and they're healthy as a horse, but they know that they need to keep their immune system boosted. They need to have, I think they may have coined the term, and I saw it in a testimonial, but they just keep boosting their stem cell quantity in their body so that they don't have injuries, or so they can heal from injuries faster, or so their immune system is better and they don't get sick as often. And so yeah, it's a preventative measure for sure.
One of the things you said earlier that really stuck out to me is you said stem cells not medicine. That clicked, that resonated with me right away. Yeah. It's not medicine, but what do you mean by that?
Well, it's a science. And so medical doctors aren't necessarily trained on stem cell. I mean, there might be a small, a couple of courses in med school, but they're not experts in stem cell.
It's not synthetic at all, right? There's nothing synthetic at all about it, which is.
No, these are live cells. These are live cells that don't, scientifically don't have any rejection. So there's really no rejection that your body has for this stem cell, whether it's yours or sourced allogenically from another source. But it's PhDs in either microbiology or protein biochemistry or protein bacteriology. It's PhDs that are in the laboratory producing the science. And there's a lot that goes into it. It's very specific. I make it sound easy. It's not. It's very expensive to produce. It's very specific. You have to have very, very specific medical equipment to produce this, and reagents and culture media and all sorts of scientific technologies. But once you have those experts like we do in the laboratory, and you get it out of the laboratory, now you need a doctor to apply it in the appropriate way.
Last question for me, I know. Let you wrap it up, Jeremy.
Sure.
So I've heard you say a couple of times, like, a couple of the case studies you talked about had to come back multiple times. This sometimes is one treatment enough. How long does the treatment last generally? I know it's different for everyone. How long does the treatment last?
Yeah, really important. It's a good question. I'm glad you're covering it because it's something that it's different for everybody. Just like I mentioned, there's some people that we have a protocol where they have to come back for 2 years, maybe every 3 or 4 months. For a lot of people, especially people that are looking at this as more of a proactive and preventative measure, what we call the fountain of youth, people that are coming back just for rejuvenation. That's once a year, maybe once every other couple years, if you're healthy. But for people that like our high impact athletes that are treating major injuries, sometimes it is one and done. Sometimes it's one orthopedic application and they get all the results they need. They're back healed and back in the ring and, winning belts or titles or whatever.
Until the next injury.
Until
the next injury.
Until the next fight. Yeah, exactly. And then there's people like you that have multiple injuries and have been suffering for many, many years. And so, we might try to address that in one shot and it might work. But it's like any other medical procedure. There are no guarantees and things have to be addressed in multiple different modalities sometimes. So yeah, sometimes it takes multiple treatments.
I think, Eric, when I hear all of this brings a lot of hope to people. A lot of what we do when we work with veterans and active duty service members and the first responder community is we are working with broken relationships, a lack of purpose, a lack of direction because of, whether it's the trauma that's being carried through life or it's the physical pain that's being carried through life. It's a combination of both that impacts every other area of life. So it's interesting to hear you talk about this because as people find, healing in one area, they're able to grow in other areas. And I think you give a lot of hope to, to wives and to kids and to communities that need to see broken, hurting people get the help that they need. One of the things Chad and I have talked about a lot over the years is that what we do should be done in cooperation with others who are also working to fix the other areas. And, we're not against science, we're not against medicine, we're not against any of these things, but what we are against is masking pain and, throwing drugs at things that really there is a solution for that. And you offer that, which I think is awesome. I think this is exactly what we need to be talking about, particularly in the veteran community.
Yeah.
Is
Real,
how do we work
real
with
solutions.
Other people who are actually figuring out the solutions to some of these issues?
Bring real solutions, not just masking.
It's very holistic, right? It's coming together on that.
Yeah.
Which is why we want to talk to you again, and we'll probably ask to talk to you again because I think this is exactly what our community needs to be discussing is how to do this. How do people find out more about your company, the treatments available, get answers to questions? Maybe this, again, doesn't apply to everyone, but where do people need to start to begin figuring out what to do next?
Yeah, I would implore people to research stem cell therapy. Unfortunately, you have to do a lot of digging to find out that, maybe some of the highest level science is offshore, but definitely look into a company like ours. BioXcellerator is our company. We're at bioaccelerator.com. It's with an X and, BioXcellerator, BIOX within the accelerator. And then also, if you're looking for testimonials and some of our great success stories, we have a fantastic YouTube channel. And then we're on every social media platform as well. So Instagram, there's tons of great stories there as well, and Facebook and even LinkedIn. So we've got a presence. I would say, please look us up. We'd love to help you if we can.
And just to be super clear to our listeners, your company BioXcellerator is available for people who want to get this treatment. They could find you on your website, try to get information on treatment, and travel to your clinic in Columbia to get treated.
Yeah, please. We're open for business. We're helping people every single day, and we want to help as many as possible. We're not going to help you if we don't think you're going to have a real result. And to your point, Jeremy and Chad, we work with other organizations and companies, and so it's not just a stem cell therapy that you're going to receive with us. We prescribe many other modalities, and it's a long-term commitment. Because we are getting to the systemic root of the problem, not masking the symptoms. So you're going to be with us. We call each other our patients and our staff here, BioX family. But yeah, once you're with us, it's a long-term commitment. We're going to get you healthy, and we're going to die trying if we have to.
What's next for BioXcellerator? You look down the road. Hopefully, part of what's next is making this more available in the United States. But how do you see your company growing and continuing to move forward?
Yeah, I would love it if the regulation was more favorable in the US, because like I said earlier, there is no debate in the scientific community that stem cells are both safe and effective. My company is doing it on a daily basis. The best part of my job is getting the phone calls when people are 3 months or 6 months or a year out of treatment going, oh my gosh, my life has changed. I was about to get divorced because of all the pain I had, and now I'm waking up and everything's great. And so that's the best part of my job. So I know this therapy is helping many, many people. I would like to help many, many more. So yeah, if we could have a footprint in the United States and have the regulators, kind of define what is legal and not legal, that would be fantastic. And then the other thing that I said earlier is, I'd like to see this become a more preventative treatment instead of people coming to us after they have an orthopedic injury or after they've discovered an autoimmune disease. Come to us every year, smaller doses every year, preventative, personalized, and getting out in front of the problem before it becomes a problem.
Awesome.
Eric, thank you very much for spending some more time with us.
Yeah.
And great conversation.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's such an important thing for us to understand. And it's almost, we're at a weird place where some of this sounds, please excuse me from saying this, but a little gimmicky, right? It's like stem cells, like, okay, that's a gimmicky thing. But it's not at all. It's something that we have to understand. And if we're not looking into how to actually treat the injuries and treat the problems, then we're missing.
I've heard so many firsthand personal testimonies from those who have traveled, and had this done. And I mean, just people who talked about they tried everything physically to get their bodies healed, and they, went and had this done, and just miraculous healing.
And our message, always is on this show and elsewhere is you have to have a spiritual foundation. You have to have the right spiritual foundation. That's what you have to build on. But then you need to also accept that our Creator has given some incredible people the wisdom and the ability to understand how to help us. And we take advantage of that. Eric, thank you very much. Hopefully we'll talk again. For those that are listening or watching, BioXcellerator, check them out. Look up Eric Stoffers. I appreciate the work that they're doing. And share this out. I think this is one of those episodes you need to share out with people that are going through some things. They've tried maybe everything. They're looking for solutions, and this may be the solution that they need. So again, Eric, thank you for that. For those of you that are watching and listening, thank you for doing so. If you're listening, take some time, go over to YouTube. You can find this video and many others that would be a help to you as well. If we can do anything for you at the Mighty Oaks Foundation, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find us at mightyoaksprograms.org, mightyoaksprograms.org, and we'd love to connect with you there. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.